Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Cool. All right. So my name is Huzaifa Mohsinally. Everyone in New Zealand knows me as Huzi. I came to New Zealand in 2013 to study engineering at Wintec. I studied a New Zealand Diploma in Engineering, NZDE, and that was 2013 to 2015. It was a really, really cool period of my journey coming to New Zealand because I made quite a few friends there. It was very practical based approach at Wintec, so it wasn't just theory. There's a lot of practical, and it was great because through Wintec I then got my internship, actually two internships, and then from there I went on to actually get my first job. A little bit about myself. I come from Mumbai, India. I never thought I'll come to New Zealand, but somebody once suggested, why don't you try New Zealand for engineering? And I came through an agent and they suggested, why don't you try Wintec? They offer an engineering course. I was interested in mechanical engineering. And that's how really the journey began. And Wintec was great because I had an opportunity to sort of study at two campuses in Hamilton, the city campus, and then I moved on to the trades and engineering campus at Rotokori. And a lot of the friends that I made then, I'm still in touch with many of them. Myself and them have sort of gone on to do many different things in life, but we are still very much connected, and we quite happily share about the times and memories that we had at Wintec. I'm also actually still in touch with some of the academic staff at Wintec, and it's always nice to connect with them and understand what's happening there, and what are the sort of career transitions that students from Wintec are having in their engineering journey. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your life in India before you came to New Zealand? Your schooling, what caused you to sort of choose engineering, and how that sort of thing, and your family. What did your parents do, and that sort of type of thing?
Yeah, so I was born near a small town called Karjat near Mumbai, India. I was 3 years old and we moved to Singapore. We stayed there for 10 years. So most of my schooling and my upbringing was in Singapore. So I was there for about 10 years, and then we moved back to India for a couple of years. I finished my high school in India, which is like your year 13 in New Zealand. And then I decided I want to go to university. I think engineering was quite natural for me. I've always been very interested in mathematics. I've been very interested in building things, very sort of creative thinking. But I have been very sort of structural in my approach to things, very methodical. So I think engineering just gave me that platform to apply all the things that I enjoy and I love. And I've always enjoyed sort of solving complex problems, and I'm quite good at breaking down complex issues into simplified concepts and then tackling them one by one. And I think engineering allowed me to explore that side of my skill set. In terms of my parents, my mum used to run a business in Singapore. She devoted a lot of her time sort of taking care and raising myself and my sister. And my father was in the IT industry. He used to work for a European company in Singapore. So that was sort of the family background. And I think, as I mentioned, right, New Zealand was a suggestion by someone. I was originally going to America, and then it changed to Germany. But I think New Zealand just caught my eye. Somebody made a suggestion, and I Googled it, and I saw it was really beautiful. I saw Wintec is offering a course, and I said, let's just do it. So I think that just started the engineering journey and career for me.
Tell us a little bit about your first few days in New Zealand. How getting off the airplane, or how that went, sort of arriving at Wintec and finding accommodation, those sort of issues.
Yeah, I quite vividly remember that. Actually, I came out. I was dying to get out. I remember I was 18 or 19 years old. I had two bags with me, a little bit of cash my mother gave me. And when I first came, I was quite lucky that somebody that came through the same agent, a friend of mine, she actually let me stay in her unit in Hamilton. And I remember that was Ulster Street. And so she gave me a place to stay for the night, and then I found another accommodation. And it was quite different for me. It was very much secluded or isolated, if you may, compared to a place like India. But it wasn't very unfamiliar in the sense I didn't really have a culture shock. I think living in Singapore, following the rules and following that sort of demography, I think New Zealand wasn't really a culture shock for me. I think for me the biggest thing adapting was just the weather, because I came in probably the end of July, which was very cold, and many people know that Hamilton gets really, really cold, especially in the mornings. So I think I quite enjoyed the starting bit when I came, especially like many international students. You come and you try and set up your license and your IRD and all the fundamentals, and then you get your enrollment done and you go into tech. And I think in a couple of weeks, what really kept me busy was after a couple of weeks I enrolled, I found a part-time job, and so my day was filled pretty quickly, and that sort of just became the routine for a couple of years.
Okay. And how did you adapt to New Zealand sort of English and language and communication? Was that a big issue for you, or?
I think for me, English is a first language for me. I speak a couple of languages from back home, but English has been a first, it is my mother tongue, it is first language. So adapting and understanding English in New Zealand wasn't very difficult for me. I think it takes a while just to get a knack of the accent. Kiwis have the gift of the gab and have a tendency sometimes to mumble up, their words. But I think after a while you sort of get used to the lingo, you get used of the pace of and the tone of speaking as well. So I didn't have much of an issue. One thing that I used to do at Wintec was when I started, I used to be an English tutor for international students. So I did that for a while in the city campus. So there would be international students who came who wanted to improve their English, and I would help them with that. So that was really good because I got to learn more about them and they got to learn more about me, and I got a chance to also impart to them what I understood and I learned about, just the Kiwi way of speaking in New Zealand. So I think that was that. And the other thing I did at Wintec as well was I used to be a note taker, and I was a peer tutor for a while as well. So all of those experiences with international students helped me learn more about them, and then they could learn more about me as well.
So you had quite a good skill set on arrival in terms of language and communication.
I would say so. Yes,
Mathematics.
I would say so. English wasn't really a problem. Communication was good. And I also should add, when I got my first job in New Zealand was a door-to-door salesman. And so I would go knocking on doors, selling different products. And I think that just built my confidence, striking a conversation with people, speaking to people on the spot, not having cold feet. And I did that across Hamilton, I did that across the Waikato, I went to the Bay of Plenty, I went to Auckland, and I was selling things. And I would meet people from all facets of life, and it was great because you just develop this confidence to speak to people that you've never met before, strangers, and you learn how to build rapport with them. So I think that just enhanced my communication skills in New Zealand.
So what would be, you know that there are some international students that struggle with language and communication. So what would be your piece of advice to them, like in a nutshell, sort of?
Yeah, I would say confidence comes from practicing. Anything you do more of makes you smoother at it. Just like brushing your teeth and driving your car, the more you do it, it just becomes natural. You don't really think about it. So I think with English language and speaking especially, I think the more conversations you have with people, just natural, normal conversations, I think the more you have, it develops this ability to just communicate better, communicate sort of seamlessly. You can come up with ideas, you can pitch in, you can say your piece, you can voice your opinion very naturally. And I think in New Zealand, it's less about prepared speeches, and it's more about the art of conversation. So I think the more you do it, the better. Other tips could be reading the newspaper every day, reading a little bit every day, or listening to podcasts, or listening to things, even watching movies if you're sort of a visual learner. So I think the more you listen to when it comes to English speaking, and the more you practice, and also seeking feedback from others on your speech, on your writing, I think that will really help. If you do that consistently, that just creates improvement, and you just get better at it.
And you say you got 2 internships
Yes.
Can you tell us about how you got the internships, the process that you went through,
Yeah.
and the experiences that you got from and what they led on to?
Yeah, sure. So I remember in the engineering diploma that I was doing, they took us to a plastics manufacturing facility in Hamilton, and least that I know at that point that I'll be probably working there. And so just during the engineering placement towards the end of the diploma, I was put into a plastics manufacturing firm for I think 4 weeks just to try out. And I remember the person hiring me at that time, asked me what I did, and I said nothing. I just study. And that person said to me that if you don't know how to use the machines, you will never find a job in New Zealand. And that was quite scary for me. But it's funny because up till today, I can't use the machines very well, and I think I did all right. So Wintec gave me that opportunity to learn more about plastics manufacturing, injection molding, blow molding, plastics, polymers, engineering, problem solving. So that was great. The 4 weeks, I think, grew to 6, 8 weeks, a little bit longer than that. So that was my first internship. And because of that internship, I got some really practical skills application that I could sort of apply from the theory I learned in the course. And then the second one that I got was while I was door knocking, I came across someone that worked in the renewable energy space. And I told that person that I'm I'm studying at Wintec and going to finish up pretty soon. And they asked me to apply for, put an expression of interest in. And they gave me a 3-month summer internship at a renewable geothermal power plant in Taupo. So that was those two different great experiences, very different industries. Both were related to engineering, but very different skill set, very different background. And I think that just helped me when I applied for my next role after that.
So that led you to finishing at Wintec and entering the workforce as a qualified sort of junior engineer, I guess.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about
so when
getting that job and
yeah
where it all led to.
So when I finished those 2 internships, I was still finishing up. I hadn't finished up yet, and I remember I'm quite stubborn by nature, and so I had a habit of not waiting for vacancies online, and I would find all the engineering companies or companies that engineering services in Hamilton or the Waikato area. And I would send them an email with an expression of interest with my CV and a little bit about myself. And I would just do that continuously. I applied and I sent it to hundreds of companies. I also took my CV and I went to these companies and I gave it to them personally as well. And I did that for 1 whole year, never got an answer from anyone. And then the second year I tried it again and I was still studying. And when I did this, I got in touch with a pharmaceutical company in Te Rapa in Hamilton. And I said that, look, I'm looking for a part-time job. I'm studying at the moment. And I was quite taken aback when they got in touch with me via email and they said, look, we don't have engineering work, but we've got engineering support work if you'd be interested. And so I went in and I did my spiel. And from my previous experience, I tried to showcase that I've got skill on the machines and practical sort of, machinery equipment type experience. And they were not interested in that. And at the end of that discussion, I just showed them some of the CAD and SolidWorks design work I'd done, and they were really interested. And so they said, would you be willing to do some drafting CAD work for us? Engineering CAD work. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to do it. And that's how really that began. It started a couple of weeks part-time student experience. And that journey took me on for about 6.5, 7 years. And I grew about 5 roles during that time. And that one career opening for me led to many other openings and opportunities.
You've hit a bit of a sweet spot there for me, in that you took along are you saying you took along some examples of your work that you had done at Wintec and showed the people that, and that was like the tipping point for getting the job?
I would say so, 100%. I think especially in today's time, everyone applies with a CV and a cover letter, and I tell a lot of younger people, young engineers, young professionals, take the work you've done. You can, things that are confidential, you can obviously anonymize it, or you can sort of strike that out. But generally speaking, showing case studies, showing a portfolio of work, showing visuals, very, very important. Even if you can't show the exact work you've done, even if you show an indicative image of that or an indicative mock-up or model of that, it gives confidence to people going, yes, this person knows what he or she is talking about. So I would say that 100% that taking those images, taking those CAD work that I've done, and I also showed them the progress and the progression of the CAD work I've done. So I showed them from for example a couple of top, bottom, and isometric views, and then I modeled that up into 3D, and then how that actually played out in reality, and they could see that I knew what I was talking, what I was doing. So absolutely, I would recommend people, when you go for a job, even if it's online, in your cover letter or in your CV, you can always add it as an appendix, and then you PDF it and you submit it. And if you're meeting people in person, put it on a presentation or just print out copies and show people what you've done. It means a lot.
So when did you start collecting that data or that information?
I would say it's a continuous process and continuous journey. As you do work, just keep records of what you've done, especially when you're at Wintec. A lot of the work you're doing it for assignments, but it is your work. Unless if it's confidential information, you obviously need to seek permission, but everything else you do, it's your work. And so, very easily, if you've done an assignment, for example, creating an equipment or creating something, doesn't matter what engineering discipline you're in, you can always just screenshot it, or you can save the images and just start dumping it onto a PowerPoint presentation or a Word document. And so by the end of your degree, you've already got a bit of a portfolio, a dossier of work you've done, and then you can just format it. So I would say it's a continuous thing. It could be a live document.
Cool. And so that's like your first job, and that sort of has led to other things now. So what was your next career step?
Yeah, so I think I've been in New Zealand, coming up to 12 years, and I've been very fortunate to have worked in about 5 or 6 different industries. I started in the as I said, plastics manufacturing, renewable space, and then I got into the pharmaceutical world. From pharmaceutical, I got into medical devices, healthcare, and now I'm in food manufacturing. And it's really cool because the industries are so different, but the engineering mindset, the structured approach, the way of thinking, the way of solving problems, all of that is very transferable. So a lot of the things I learned at Wintec, especially from a practical sense, the way you think, the way you problem solve, it doesn't really matter which industry you're in or which role you're in, you can apply it. So I would say after those internships, I got into pharmaceutical. I learned a lot about equipment design. I learned about pharmaceutical validation, facility validation, process validation. And it was great because it wasn't just core engineering, it was how engineering fits in with operations, with quality, with technical, with R&D, and all the other departments at play. And then from there, I got into more product design and development in the medical device space. And I did work with quite a few big New Zealand companies and also New Zealand startups as well, where I would design things for them. And from then on, as I mentioned, I've been in the food and beverage space for a number of years now.
And further study or lifelong learning?
I'm a fan of lifelong learning. So after my New Zealand diploma in engineering, which I completed in 2015, I worked for a couple of years as a draftsman. And then probably after 3 years, once I got my New Zealand residency, I spoke to my boss at the time. And at that time, I was leading new product development, design and development for a plastics manufacturing company, medical device type company. And I said, look, I want to go back to university and I would like to use the credit from my New Zealand diploma and put it onto a Washington Accord degree. And I did that. And I did that for 3 years. And I did that full-time study with full-time work. And it was the hardest thing I've done, but I wouldn't change a thing. So I did that, and then after I finished my Bachelor of Engineering, I went on to do an Executive MBA, and I finished that last year. So, I've always been a fan of studying, learning. I don't think it needs to stop. And, I do think also that learning does not have to be limited to exactly that end goal or end profession that you want to do. Sometimes you start with something, and then things change depending on your likes, dislikes, your strengths as well. But I think what's important is that you keep a curious mindset and that you want to learn. Don't just learn or do a degree or a diploma just for that piece of paper. do it because you want to learn and you want to upskill yourself.
How well do you think the Wintec experience, that diploma, how well did that sort of set you up going forward?
I think the Wintec, having now studied at 3 institutions in New Zealand, one being a diploma, one being a degree, and one being a higher level degree, I think Wintec is a lot more practical. There is theory, but I think it's a lot more practical in the sense a lot of the work you do, a lot of the problems you solve, a lot of the assignments, a lot of the site visits, a lot of the placements, they're very real world focused. Not saying that university is not, but what I found at Wintec, especially when you come from overseas, especially from a market or a country that's very theory focused, it was quite refreshing for me to have more practical sort of building experience where you use your hands and you make things and you problem solve on that. For example, I remember at Wintec we had to build a bridge using a wooden skewers, and I think it was to try and work out what the stress is if you put you put a car across it or some weight across it, and that was great, right? Great learning to try and experience what, how stress or how strength of a structure can be impacted by the weight or just the way, the joints are sort of put together. So I would say that Wintec was quite different in that respect. It set me up because the people I worked with, most of them were international as well. And so many of us shared very similar challenges. And also it was great because we were trying to help one another. We used to study together as well. And all of that gave us a really good flavor of what the workforce would be like. And so I would say Wintec set me up really well.
And now you're branching out on your own sort of consultancy work. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So, at the moment, a little bit about my professional career. So at the moment, I work at Goodman Fielder, New Zealand. I lead export business for about 11 global markets where I look after exports of whipping cream and UHT milk. And so it's amazing because I get to travel a lot, but also I get to learn from so many people from across the globe. And it's great, right? Because it's a New Zealand company, we're selling New Zealand product, and I absolutely love that. Outside of that, I've been very passionate about helping young professionals especially, but just professional small businesses. And so a couple of months ago, I started my own personal branding consultancy called HM Exec, which is on the side. And really the target of this is to help professionals, doesn't matter what spectrum they are, junior to senior professionals and small businesses, develop their personal brand, understand their story, and scale up in their career and scale up and make more money in their business.
So that sort of brings us from right from the beginning through to present. Is there any one thing that you would say do differently as that journey? Any sort of thing that you would, if you had your chance again, that you would do a little differently? Or
I don't think I would do anything differently. I don't think I regret anything. I think everything has been great. Maybe if there was one thing I had to pick, I would say is I would knock on doors and I would ask people who have done it, people that aspire to be out, probably have had more chats with them. Because one thing I've realized in 12 years is when you go and ask people, genuinely you ask people that, hey, I'm really inspired by you and I aspire to be like you, tell me your story. I've never met anyone that has said, no, I don't want to share with you. So I didn't do enough of that. I do a lot of that now, and I encourage younger people especially, but it doesn't have to be young, it could be anyone, but especially younger professionals, younger engineers, speak to people, right? You can learn so much from them because you might just learn that the mistakes they made or things that you want to try, they've already tried and they can give you some advice. But I think overall it's not been easy, especially 12 years you come as an immigrant. Along with your studies and your work, you're trying to navigate through visa issues. You go from a student visa to a work visa to a resident visa to a permanent resident visa and then a New Zealand citizen. So it's not easy. But I probably wouldn't change anything, I think, because all of those struggles and challenges has made me who I am today. And I quite enjoy helping younger people that come to me or new people in the country because I've been through that journey and I know how it is. So, I probably wouldn't change anything.
So we've pretty much come full circle. So thank you for being, I must say you're the first person that I've done one of these interviews for, so I really want to thank you for that opportunity. Is there anything you'd just like to say in conclusion?
Now, I would say, look, it's a fantastic opportunity. I really love this. Wintec has been, as we said, the start of the of the journey. Never thought that in 12 years I'll be, interviewing for Wintec, and it's always nice. I'm still in touch with some of the staff at Wintec, and I always love going back, and it's probably long due for a trip back into the campus to say hello, but really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, good. All right. We'll finish it there.